Hello, folks. Sean Meredith with Effective Leadership Coaching and Consulting. Today's Tuesday. I typically do my communication tips, and I'm not doing that today, at least not completely. I'm from Pittsburgh. You may or may not know that. And in Pittsburgh, we just had a tragic incident with a shooting at a local synagogue. 11 people were reported dead, and we're still kind of sorting out as a city what happened here. We're still trying to figure it out. And I've recorded this video, probably 15, 16 times at this point, and I just can't seem to get it right. And I'm reflecting on that. So I think today I'm going to do some reflection on that, kind of my internal process here, and maybe there'll be something useful in that, and then some thinking about that process. So in the spirit of practicing vulnerability, I found out about this news, and my first reaction was to deny, to distance. I heard it; it was kind of news, and yeah, I just tried to move on. I didn't really notice I was doing this, but I did it, and I started seeing posts on social media. Started getting closer and closer to home. I was actually out of town, so I was physically getting closer to home, and it was getting closer to home as I saw closer friends reporting on this, knowing people. The names were coming out about who was affected by this, and I felt this conflict internally. This conflict where, it was something I wanted to lean into. It was something I wanted to explore, and at the same time, it was something that I just couldn't touch. And even now, trying to touch it is hard. You can tell in the way I'm talking. The way I'm recording many of these iterations. And I went to others. I was seeing what people were posting and how other people were managing this, looking for that sense of community. And really what I realized is that I am, like all of us in this incident, traumatized. That trauma affects our brain. It kicks on that limbic system. We get sort of hijacked by that limbic system, and that limbic system is our emotional system. It's the fight or flight freeze, or sometimes I add flock to that. So we want to react, and trying to create a thoughtful video is very hard to do when your brain just goes towards those passions of fight, flight, or freeze. And I've been seeing a lot of that in the posting, the different variations of that. Some folks are just unplugging. Some folks are business as usual. Some folks are trying to find ways to fight this with political activism, donations, tending to others, being that helper, ways to sort of engage this from that limbic response. So I think that's what I'm contemplating. How do we get in these conflicts, in these trauma times, into thinking? Secondly, it's led me to this idea of conflict. This idea keeps ringing in my head. Conflict. Here we are in a very overt conflict. In a way, this is the epitome of it. Although I often challenge that use of the word conflict, because I think when people talk about conflict, they're often talking about unresolved conflict. We've become very conflict averse as a culture of people. I think maybe we've always been that way. And what we're really running away from is unresolved conflict, because conflict is a necessary evil in growth. Conflict is the way we get to growth. It's the way we evolve. It's the way we change. Conflict, two people or more, it can be internal. I won't really go there right now, but two people or more have a different position on something, and they're trying to resolve that. In the most immature way, we try to resolve that by trying to get the other to stop stating their position. So we'll try to get them to shut up. We'll try to get them to shut down. We'll try to take them away. We'll try to argue them away. So we have the conflict of the two, and we want this to go away. There's a term for that, which is emotional distancing and ultimately emotional cutoff. And we have a situation here in Pittsburgh that exemplifies a very extreme example of that, where we move towards violence, physical violence, and murder. Um, Also, a lot of emotional violence, violence of hate speech, and violence of targeting particular people or communities. So I was then thinking about, how do I get through this conflict? How do I resolve this? I then went to an idea that I'm not really part of it. I don't know these individuals. I don't know these individuals who committed these atrocities. I don't directly know the individuals who were affected by this. I know people who know them. Third degree of separation. So I'm coupling this idea that this conflict is hit an ultimate and a cutoff. It's People have died. This individual is apprehended, and now I think it's time for healing. Time for growth. Time to tend to the individuals who are affected by this. On the other end, I'm thinking about talk around preventative. So we move towards, how do we stop this from ever happening again? And I as I listen to talk shows and news shows, I get worried because I'm hearing what I would like to call as cutoff masquerading as thoughtfulness. So this emotional cutoff, almost recipes for not resolving the conflict. These individuals who are at these extreme ends of hatred and violence, I've heard about various levels of sort of censorship and cutting this off, and removing access, burying these individuals. And really what that's going to do is it's going to lead towards what I was talking about with unresolved conflict. We're going to have an infected wound that is going to fester and eventually kill the system. It's going to kill society. And this is an example of that. This individual did not get to this level of hate overnight. And so how do we move through conflict? Well, I think coupling these two things, getting our brains back to a state of frontal lobe thinking, we need to tend to our wounds. Self-care. We need to remind this body that it's safe, and it needs to be safe in order to do that. And there's a lot of great work being done with that right now with the community here in Pittsburgh. Secondly, I was thinking about, how do we get preventative? So I think a challenge for myself, and a challenge I would invite for all of you, is to think about, what are the unresolved conflicts in your sphere of influence? These might be family, these might be friends, these might be coworkers, these might be neighbors, this might be the person on the bus that it's hard to talk to and hard to deal with. And how can we manage those conflicts right now, those unresolved conflicts, and get them to some resolution, some sort of workable state of connection, some workable state of human connection and human collaboration, human evolution, so that the 2 points of the conflict actually create a superposition that's a combination of the two. And what personally I've taken on as an action step is thinking about the ripple effect of resolving the conflicts in my sphere. Really, that right now, the future shooters are out there, and they are engaged in lots of unresolved conflict. And typically, these are people that are very hard to deal with. It's not random that they're going down these paths, and we could talk a lot about that. But what can I control? I can control addressing those conflicts. So it's really a challenge. With what I do in my work, it's all about helping people work together, to collaborate, to really express the apex of human collaboration and connection, and realizing that I really need to address that right here, right now, not over there, or not in the past. So again, I reiterate the challenge. Reiterate that challenge of you really can you take an inventory of these conflicts and think about what would it mean to intentionally and get a methodology of trying to resolve them, trying to really knock on that door and push your comfort zone and push other people's comfort zone to carry through that conversation and not get caught in this sort of stalemate of denial, avoidance, token action. So, we kind of get really busy over here until we're sort of exhausted and feel that we've done what we need to do. Um, sometimes we talk about running in place. I talk about fighting in place, that we fight this battle in place, that we don't get anything done, that we just kind of, we're active and nothing happens. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. This is unresolved. This is kind of a raw take. Like I said, I've done this a few times, and I would love to hear people's thoughts. I would love to have the other end of this conversation loop back in about these two ideas of am I really kind of getting out of my survival mode and thinking through things? And if I'm thinking through things, can I identify in my sphere unresolved conflicts and work on them? Over here, me do the work, the hard work. So that's what I got. Really hoping the best, seeing what we can do to tend to the wounded, emotionally and physically, and get this city back on track. Thanks.